Hello everyone, my name is Nie Yu. I'm a year one PhD student in the University of New York. I want to give you a presentation about energy supply, about emergency energy connections in urban cities. This is a catalog of my presentation. It will include 5 parts. The first part is the current difficulty of the energy supply in urban cities. I will introduce some examples of large power outage and the damage caused by them. The second part is the current scheme about using emergency electric power sources. The third part is the shortage of current scheme. Then I will introduce a better scheme and a new potential emergency power source to improve the energy supply for emergency energy. Finally, I will give my conclusion. Here is a question. Why do we need emergency energy? Because there are lots of unexpected accidents causing the paralysis of the urban power grid. For example, this is a large scale power failure in China caused by snow disaster. And in this picture, there is a large power outage in northeast Brazil because of the accidental breakdown of dam power supply system. Because the power supply cannot meet the peak demand, Indians in the northeast India suffered from a large power outage for about 2 days. What's more, in New York, some malignant social events can also cause large power outage. Various reasons can lead to the large power outage, and the harm of large-scale power outage is also serious. Firstly, the most direct impact is the damage of power grid equipment, which can cost a lot to repair or rebuild. Secondly, people's life can be very inconvenient. In this picture, because of the power outage, people had to cook by candlelight. Besides the above, power outage can also threaten people's life safety. In this picture, the doctor had to perform the operation without the assistance of any electronic medical equipment. In view of the above mentioned facts, emergency energy is quite necessary. Electricity has been an essential part in human life, which means that almost all industries need electricity to drive the corresponding electrical equipment to complete the work. For now, prevention means are mainly reflected in the real-time monitoring of the power grid. It usually uses relay protection, safety automatic device, and low frequency, low voltage load shedding device in some emergencies to protect the power grid. However, when the power grid itself is damaged and stops working, for a large-scale power failure, such as a citywide power failure, the current emergency power supply measures are not perfect and standardized. So what can be used when the urban power grid is abnormal? The answer is emergency electrical power source. There are 3 main kinds of emergency electric power sources so far. The first kind is the soil or gas generator set. The generator set is applicable to various loads with allowable interruption of power supply time greater than 15 seconds. Generator set is the most common emergency electric power source used in most projects at present. Due to its large capacity, parallel operation, and long continuous power supply time, generator set has a long application history. The second is EPS, emergency power supply. EPS is a power supply equipment applied to firefighting facilities, emergency lighting, and other first-class load electrical equipment. EPS mainly adopts SPWM technology, and the system mainly includes rectifier charger, battery pack, inverter, mature switching device, and so on. The third is a UPS, uninterrupted power supply. UPS is a constant voltage and constant frequency power supply equivalent with energy storage device and inverter as the main component. It's the equipment that can be replaced the urban power grid supply for continuous power supply in case of power failure. It is mainly used to provide uninterrupted power supply to a single computer network system, or other power electronic equipment. To know better about the advantages and disadvantages of these three different emergency electric power source, I will introduce them through the comparison among them. The table shown in the PowerPoint is the comparison between EPS and UPS. It is obvious that EPS is better than UPS at many aspects, such as structure, power saving, and so on. However, UPS has the fastest start time, which means that when the urban power grid is paralyzed, UPS can supply the power to the load immediately. This table is the comparison between EPS and the desired or gas generator set. It is obvious that EPS is better than generator set at many aspects, such as start time, environmental protection, and so on. However, the biggest advantage of diesel or gas generator set is long-time power supply. EPS and UPS can only supply the power for a few hours without interruption. However, generator set can supply the power for a few days without interruption. Next, I will introduce the two main methods of using emergency electrical power sources. The first is distributed power. I will using an example of a function diagram of UPS to introduce the basic principle of distributed power. Distributed power is an emergency measure prepared in advance before the power failure occurs. It means that the emergency electric source is set near the facilities needing power supply after the power failure. The emergency electric sources is also connected to the urban power grid to test if it is normal. When the urban power grid is normal, load is supplied by the urban power grid directly through bypass, and the UPS is charged by the urban power grid too. Once the urban power grid is irregular, switch will be switched to the other side, and the UPS will be started to supply power to the load. The second method is emergency power vehicle. There are two advantages of emergency power vehicle. On the one hand, the vehicle can quickly arrive at the site. On the other hand, it has the fast start power supply performance after the failure of the urban power grid. Like shown in this picture, as long as the interface on emergency power vehicle is connected to the load through wires, emergency power vehicle can supply power to the load instead of the urban power grid. The last but not least, all three emergency electrical power sources can be carried by electrical power vehicle. So how to choose the suitable electrical power source? It mainly depends on the allowable failure time of the load. When the load needs instantaneous power supply, UPS should be chosen. When the load needs power supply in 5 seconds, EPS should be chosen. When the load needs power supply in 5 minutes, generator set is the best choice. With 3 kinds of emergency electrical power sources and 2 main methods, current emergency power supply measures are still not popularized and standardized. Some people are usually equipped with emergency electrical power sources separately for their own needs, which cause a lot of problems, such as high cost of buying and maintaining the emergency electrical power sources. And this means each person only need to buy an emergency electrical power source which has a small capacity, and it leads to many amounts and occupied areas. There are also a certain number of people not equipped with emergency electrical power source. They have to live and work without the electricity until the urban power grid is fixed and normal. To improve the current situation, I propose a more prepared and standardized scheme here. With the above introduction of 3 different kinds of emergency electrical power source, it is obvious that the appropriate use of different kinds of emergency electrical power sources for different situations of power failure is important. The facilities like hospital and IT company, which contains electrical equipment related to life safety and the important data, should use distributed power, which use UPS as an emergency electrical power source. The facilities which contain first-class load electrical equipment can still use distributed power, but the emergency electric power source should be replaced with EPS, since it has less cost and more lifespan. Some sudden disasters can lead to the power failure, and the power grid will be paralyzed for a long time. However, fortunately, generator set can be quite useful. What's more, there are some temporary activities, such as concert, using some areas which also have electrical equipment. When the power failure occurs in these activities, emergency power vehicles which carry EPS or UPS can be very helpful. So preparing a sufficient number of emergency power vehicles carrying different kinds of emergency electrical power sources is quite necessary. However, plans can't keep up with the changes. There are always some unexpected situations. So discovering a new potential emergency power source can also be helpful. With the development of electric vehicle industry, more and more electrical vehicles are running in the cities. So the battery in each electrical vehicle can be a new potential emergency power source to deal with the power failure. This is a table which shows the daily electricity consumption of an ordinary family and the specific energy of a battery of an electrical vehicle. According to the table, the daily electricity consumption of an ordinary family is about 10 to 20 kilowatt hour, and the specific energy of a battery of an electrical vehicle is about 15 to 60 kilowatt hour. This means that one battery of an electrical vehicle can meet 2 to 3 families' daily electricity demand. With the amount of electrical vehicle increasing, the battery of electrical vehicle has the full potential to become a new kind of emergency power source. In conclusion, at present, the emergency power sources are very various and can basically deal with many situations of sudden power failure. Therefore, it is very important to have a standardized and fully prepared emergency power supply scheme. The allowable power failure time of load and the site of load are two the most important factors when considering how to choose and use the appropriate emergency electrical power source. The scheme mentioned above is a relatively complete emergency power supply scheme proposed according to the advantages and disadvantages of each emergency electrical power source. What's more, to make more preparation to deal with sudden power failure, the battery of electrical vehicle is also a new and potential emergency electrical source, considering that the electrical vehicles have been more and more popular. That's the end of my presentation.